Those guys were 10 yards, then they tried 15, then they tried 20 yards. And he still ran past them. So that just goes to show you what type of athlete this guy is.
There's been very few prospects in this year's draft cycle that have done more for themselves or have reshaped the narrative around who they are as a player more than North Dakota State wide receiver Christian Watson. 80.83 is his consensus valuation. 6'0", 208 pounds, 32.5-inch arms, 10 1/8 inch hands, and a verified 4.36 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine. You want to talk about height, weight, speed. This is the definition of height, weight, speed, Dre. So talk to us a little bit about a receiver who's coming out of a very run-heavy offense in North Dakota State and what that jump from level of play at the FCS level to now coming to the NFL is going to look like after you've got a chance to see him work his way through the draft process.
Sure. I think that you hit the nail right on the head. You know, for guys that play at that lower level of ball, you want to see them dominate, right? And he was a man amongst boys at North Dakota State. And a few things, man. I mean, like guys who are taller, you know, you sort of expect them to be built-up guys. He's sudden, right? He's very sudden. His 10 is extremely explosive. I think the one thing I like about him most, he's competitive, man. His attitude, like he's a dog, and I love that about him. He had a few drops, right? Some focus drops, but I'm not necessarily as concerned about those because, again, if you can do it once, you can do it twice. It's just a matter of getting him the focus on seeing the ball hit his hands. But I think he came to the Senior Bowl and showed that he alone and that he was not a fish out of water and the lights weren't too bright for him. So I'm excited about this kid's future, and if he goes to the right type of offense that allows him to work vertically, I think he's going to excel. I think the thing too that really stood out about him is that his ability, a lot like Drake London's, their ability to create separation at the top, man, was very impressive for these high cut guys. So I really like the player.
I'm glad you mentioned his competitiveness. I mean, this is a guy who wasn't one of the top 500 wide receiver recruits coming out of high school in Tampa, ends up in North Dakota State, goes to a run heavy offense. Guess what? You better have a chip on your shoulder and be ready to block playing in that offense. Right. And you see that physicality from him. He doesn't care if he's not getting the ball. And I think that's one of my favorite things as well about him is kind of that selflessness and relentlessness that he plays with, both when he's running routes and when they're running the football and you're asking on him to step down on the safety and help create some explosive runs.
I think that the very thing that I like about him too is that he returns kicks, right? You don't see guys that are 6'4", return kicks. So he, just speaks to the type of player he is, how competitive and how tough he is, man. It was actually very, very, very good at doing so, man. So I think that this player's best football is certainly ahead of him.
Yeah, I'm glad Dre brought up the Senior Bowl because I think that's when a lot of people walked out of there with some question marks because there was some issues as far as him with, cornerbacks pressing him and him getting off his release, right? But like I said, as our job as talent evaluators is to look at every piece. So I had to go look at the game film, and when you watch the game film, it's very rarely that those guys were pressing Christian Watson. So I think it was something that he just really wasn't used to. He just needed development. Like those guys were 10 yards, then they tried 15, then they tried 20 yards. And he still ran past them. So that just goes to show you what type of athlete this guy is. And I mean, you talk about a first round, I'm gonna tell you this. I would take a gamble on him in the first round. Like my guy Joe said, what we say, Joe?
Bet on Trace, baby.
Bet on Trace, baby. It's not, and I don't know if there's anybody else in this class that's 6'4", 200 pounds, running a 4.3. We have a lot of smaller wide receivers. So if you're talking about trying to find that true X wide receiver, I think Christian Watson can be that guy.
Put him in Tennessee with A.J. Brown, huh?
Heavy
offense.
Yeah, I mean, what I loved about him was and like you talked about, the size, the weight, the speed. And he learned every rep in press at the Senior Bowl to where he started mixing up his releases, improving with his hand uses and combating in the contact window, using kind of a stretch release, showing the fluidity in his lower body. And then for as well as there were some taller corners at the Senior Bowl, and on some of those quick hitters in one-on-ones, he was able to not only redirect and get through press coverage, he was able to box those guys out, especially in the red zone. There was a rep against Kobe Bryant, who all of us who were there saw him. He's a legit 6'1", long limb corner. He was able to get inside and box him out and catch that ball for a touchdown. So it was that and I mean, he's not Deebo Samuel, but he does. He does give you some of that jet sweep. They put him in the backfield at sometimes in that offense, and he was comfortable running the ball. And he was similar to Treylon Burks when Brentley talked about. He was their best offensive player, and they just found a way to get him the football.
I agree with everything that's been said about Christian Watson.
Uh-oh.
It's an uh-oh. The thing is, I have some issues with his ability to track the football down the field. And there's some inconsistencies with him being able to locate the football. And for a guy who predominantly wins vertically, that scares me a little bit. Because I don't think he's a natural ball tracker, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's necessarily his specialty. And for a guy who we're all talking about his ability as a deep threat, his ability to get vertical, his ability to stack, and he was 6'4", runs a 4'3". There are some times where you can't look at the ball, and there's times he does, but you hope to not see that, and so that gives me some cause of concern. Now the upside again is through the roof. I mean, I'm not going to deny that. Like, if you want to bet on the traits, this is the bet on traits kid. But I did want to bring to light some question marks that I do have for him as a prospect.
I think that's fair. Go ahead, Dre.
Yeah, I just would like to answer that a few things. One, the thing that leaves me encouraged about this player is that you saw him win in all levels of the field. Like, you saw him win short, you saw him win in intermediate area, you saw him win in several different ways. So he's not necessarily only a deep ball guy. And then two, if you don't see a guy that's pressed a lot on tape, you would love to see if they have the skill set, the traits to be able to be pressed either with strength or foot quickness. And I think that once he gets pro coaching and he learns, which you saw him grow during the Senior Bowl through those days, once he gets pro coaching and learn how to be pressed with his speed and his strength and his competitiveness, it's going to be a wrap.
Bet on traits. Christian Watson, wide receiver, North Dakota State.